The Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, has lifted some of the sanctions imposed on Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali after the military took over government in the countries. The regional bloc announced this during its extraordinary session in Nigeria's capital, Abuja. Arise correspondent Punariman Benjamin tells us more.
It is the extraordinary session of the Authority of Heads of State and Government. The focus is on the political, peace and security situation in the ECOWAS sub-region. Present are members from the diplomatic community and key stakeholders from the ECOWAS region. The event was declared open by the chairman of the Authority of Heads of State and Government, President Bola Tinubu, highlighting the significance of the session.
It is through our concerned effort and concerted efforts and a deep sense of history that we can address these challenges in the spirit of a shared vision, solidarity, and collective responsibilities. Burdened by the weight of the challenges confronting us, I am equally buoyed by the spirit of a collective resolve that defines our ECOWAS community. This extraordinary summit was convened at a critical juncture that demands our focused attention on regional issues.
After a closed-door meeting, the ECOWAS President Aliou Touré announces the decision to lift economic sanctions.
On sanctions, the authority has resolved as follows. The authority has resolved to lift with immediate effect the following measures imposed on the Republic of Niger. A, closure of land and air borders between ECOWAS countries and Niger to be lifted. No-fly zone of all commercial flights to and from Niger is to be lifted. Suspension of all commercial and financial transactions between ECOWAS member states and Niger is to be lifted. Freezing of all service transactions, including utility services, is to be lifted. Freezing of assets of the Republic of Niger in ECOWAS central banks is to be lifted. Freezing of assets of Niger state and the state enterprises and parastatals in commercial banks is to be lifted. Suspension of Niger from all financial assistance and transactions with all financial institutions, particularly EBID and BOID, is to be lifted. Travel ban on the government officials and their family members is also to be lifted. This decision is based on humanitarian considerations, especially as we are in the month of Lent and as we prepare for the holy month of Ramadan. The authority has also resolved to lift the sanctions regarding the recruitment of Malian citizens in statutory and professional positions within ECOWAS.
He cites humanitarian reasons for lifting the ban. However, only economic and financial bans were lifted while the political sanctions remain in place.
The authority recognizes that the 3 member states represent 17.4% of the region's 425 million population. Even though they represent 10% of the region's GDP, their departure will constitute a reduction of the market size of ECOWAS. The authority recognizes that intra-community trade may also be disrupted, especially trade in unprocessed goods such as livestock, fish, plant, agriculture produce, mineral products. It will also affect traditional handicraft products as well as industrial products of community origin.
Experts say the removal of some of these sanctions is indeed a welcome development for the regional bloc, but whether these three countries will return to the bloc is what everyone will be hoping to see. Punaraman Benjamin, Arise News.
Away from Africa, 2 years have passed since Russia's unprovoked full-scale invasion of Ukraine on February 24, 2022. Still on international relations, the war between Ukraine and Russia appears to be continuing without any end in sight. The conflict has killed more than 10,000 civilians and wounded nearly 20,000 others, according to the United Nations. The United Nations Security Council on Friday had a special meeting on the eve of the second anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. I'm now being joined here by a former Nigerian diplomat and one-time Consul General at the Nigerian Mission in Atlanta, Ambassador Joe Keshi. Ambassador Keshi, good to see you again on This Day Live. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Ruben, and glad to be with you.
Okay, Mali was suspended from ECOWAS in 2021, Niger in December 2022, and Burkina Faso in July 2022. And here we are, months after, cumulatively, more than 2 years. ECOWAS saying, oh, because of Lent and Ramadan, for humanitarian reasons, you know, those sanctions have been lifted. Well, what is responsible, in your view, for this vote fast? And, you know, is it not an afterthought? Because the reasons they have offered look like something that is in plain sight. Should they even have imposed those sanctions in the first place?
Well, thank you, Ruben. And as a student of literature, I'm sure you correct me if I'm wrong. I can't remember whether it was a song or whether it's a title of a Shakespeare book or it's something we just say, that all is well that ends well.
That's Shakespearean. Shakespeare.
I think here we are more... Good, thank you very much. I thought as much. I think here we are after, you know, quite some time. ECOWAS leaders have taken what, in my view, is a sensible decision that they should have taken in the first instance. And as I listened to, you know, to the communique and actually read it, my first comment was that I wish the ECOWAS Secretariat had done its job very well. Because at the end of the day, the ECOWAS Secretariat is the institution that provides the facts and the figures to the heads of states on which decisions are taken. It would appear that after all what, you know, ECOWAS had gone through, the threats from some of this country to withdraw from ECOWAS, it was only then that ECOWAS Secretariat decided to do a thorough job and presented some of these facts to the, you know, to the heads of state. But look, this is a welcome development. And we must also appreciate the fact that the leaders have taken a decision, you know, to ensure that the community is not, you know, broken. It has taken a long time. Look, it took a long time to get ECOWAS going to start with. ECOWAS has been managing to survive. And all this crisis, you know, has not been helpful. ECOWAS was established essentially for the economic integration of the region, but political crisis and security issues have actually not allowed ECOWAS to advance. We can only hope that with this decision now, you know, and there's still a lot to be done, some diplomatic, you know, shuttle and reach out to these countries, that more could be achieved, and then the crisis, you know, can be amicably resolved, and these countries can come back. I would also say this, that I sincerely hope that Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso do not begin to feel that, oh yes, it's because we took a decision, they've kowtowed to us and we need to make more demands. No, they should please extend the same hand of friendship to ECOWAS and see whether, you know, collectively they can resolve any other outstanding issue. The political sanctions, you know, can be resolved through diplomatic engagement.
Well, I think, you know, you should help us explain the distinction between economic sanctions and political sanctions? Because one of the reasons they give is that, oh, not all the sanctions have been lifted. What are these political sanctions? Considering the fact that even Guinea has now been told it can attend technical meetings of ECOWAS, and then staff members of the three countries, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, 77 of them can now return to their positions within ECOWAS headquarters and the relevant bodies. So what exactly is left behind?
Well, I think they are probably referring to the attendance of meeting by the heads of states. I mean, by the current, junta leaders. I'm not too sure, but it's a good question. That's what I thought, because I said to myself, look, I've always known of, mostly economic sanctions, and now that they are lifting economic sanctions, every other thing is, it's negotiable. Now, if it's the attendance of meetings, that shouldn't take too long to resolve. And that's why I have continuously advocated the need for shuttle diplomacy, particularly by the Nigerian leadership, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, the President, to go around the region in order to bring everybody back to the table and decide on what ECOWAS could achieve. We should, again, I repeat, we should not forget why ECOWAS was established, since the 70s. We need to begin to look at the scorecard and see how far close we are or we are not in terms of economic integration. That is the reason why ECOWAS was set up. And we are nowhere close to achieving that. Moving forward, our aim and objective in terms of ECOWAS should be to continue that drive to ensure economic integration, economic development in the region. Look, if we had done this over the years, I'm not sure that the current crisis we're experiencing, both here in Nigeria and elsewhere in the West African sub-region, will be as bad as it is. But here we are. We've been dealing, look, ECOWAS spent 10 years or so in Liberia and Sierra Leone. And since then, it's been one crisis or the other, and all political, actually, and very little on economic issues. But the most important thing is that economic sanctions have been lifted because it was economic sanctions that the juntas in all these countries have been using to blame, have been using as an excuse for the situation in their respective countries now. Now that it has been removed, I think we are also going to begin to see that there might also be some pressure on the leaders in these countries to begin to deliver on their promises. And that's something we should honestly watch out, for, because they've been using ECOWAS sanction as an excuse for their inability to deliver goods and services to the people, to their respective, citizens.
But what are the implications for the democratic project in West Africa? We've seen the growth of illiberalism in these West African states, and now they seem to be having the last laugh, having threatened to withdraw and having set up their own Sahel Defense Alliance, and now it looks like it's ECOWAS that has been made to eat the humble pie. What stops any other junta in any other West African state from organizing a coup and making a mockery of ECOWAS protocols about democratic process?
That's a very good question as well. I have repeatedly said that in this part of the world, it is not as if democracy is declining. No, democracy is not declining, and it's not receding. Because in all the countries, people go out massively to vote. Unfortunately, their votes don't count. The leaders, the politicians, decide to do something else. And that crazy, why these nations are unstable most of the time. So here we are. I'll make the case again that until the leaders not just of this region, but African leaders in particular, begin to focus on doing the right thing, begin to focus on the developmental issues, and, play less of politics to start with. Allow democracy to flourish. You will probably begin to see some process. It's not like, yes, this is going to hurt, but look, if you take, for example, and I've repeatedly said this in your program once or twice, or, when we're dealing with Senegal, I kept saying, if a coup happens in Senegal, will everybody be surprised? But at least there have been some reversal, a change of mind in Senegal. But the point still remains that the president of Senegal is going to leave Senegal with even far more crisis, than anticipated in the first instance. So the best we can expect is that the current leaders in these countries, would have the sense to do the right thing, return the country to democratic practice, and ensure that goods and services, democratic dividends, are provided to the people. There are other issues like in the Sahara region, and I think this is the best time for them to come around, begin to discuss with neighbors and ECOWAS to see how collectively they can address some of these issues of insecurity in their respective countries. The most important thing is that until leaders in the region and Africa begin to do the right thing, begin to follow the constitution, and continuously, if there's going to be a change of government, so be it. Let's hope that the new leaders will do their best and change direction. But if everybody thinks that no, they are going to play politics, of course, you should expect that the military in some countries will strike at one time or the other. So at the end of the day, it depends not so much on the military, but on what the civilian politicians do in their respective countries. And we should hold them accountable, to do the right thing all the time. And you will see that there will be less, disruption of the democratic process.
Okay, well, one of the things that ECOWAS is saying to the leaders of the three major countries involved in this crisis is that they should reconsider their decision to withdraw from ECOWAS. Now, that's the ECOWAS side we had yesterday. Is there a possibility that Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso may just say no, they would rather stay with their Sahel Defense Coalition? I think it was you that made the point earlier on, previously on this program, that this is not just between those countries and ECOWAS, that Russia is also involved. What if Putin tells them, don't mind ECOWAS, stay out? Is that a possibility? And what would be the cost of that?
No, I think it's in their best interest to return to ECOWAS. And I want to believe that at the end of the day, they will probably do, that. Look, let's be honest with ourselves and let's give them some credit. They've played their cards very well, and to some extent, they've come out victorious. So if they want to push their luck beyond where they are today, they might find themselves running into some crisis. If I were in their shoes, I would accept the current olive brand being offered by ECOWAS and see how, we can work with ECOWAS. I mean, they can work with ECOWAS to resolve all other outstanding issues because it is in the best interest of these countries. For one reason that I gave before, they've used ECOWAS as an excuse for their inability to address domestic problems that they are going through. Now that ECOWAS have lifted the sanctions, there are no more excuses for them to use. So it is in their best interest, particularly in countries like Mali and Burkina Faso. Look, here the soldiers were asked to go and fight in the war front. They came back and took over government. Now they have to govern. There's no more usage of ECOWAS as an excuse. They have to now begin to deliver on the promises made to the people. And believe me, if they fail to do that, don't be surprised in a couple of months or years, there's an uprising in some of these countries. So it is in their best interest to come back, begin to work with ECOWAS, but more especially provide leadership and what is needed to move these countries forward. That's their best guarantee. And if at the end of the day they want to do it through democratic process, all they need to do is to reach an agreement with ECOWAS that this is the way we want to do things. Look, Ruben, let's not forget this. Many of us seem to forget that those who established ECOWAS in the first instance were mostly military governments, and in some cases, military dictators. President Yadema, who worked with General Gowon, was a dictator that was in power for over 30 years. And I think there were other military leaders in a number of countries with only a few civilian administration. So we should be able to be tolerant, of the military. Not that we welcome them, not that it is the best thing, but as long as the political class fail to realize what they need to do, we shouldn't be surprised if this violent, takeover of government.
Ambassador,
so it's beholding on the politicians to do the right thing.
Ambassador, it's good you mentioned General Gowon. General Gowon, this same week, visited President Tinubu on this same ECOWAS question, in his capacity as chairman of the ECOWAS heads of state body. And then he moved from there. Later, he went to the ECOWAS commission in Abuja and presented a letter, some of which, the suggestions he made are now reflected in the position that has been taken by ECOWAS. What's your assessment of the intervention by General Yakubu Gowon, or you think that was just a cover story to allow ECOWAS to save face? He having been one of the founding fathers in May 49 years ago. ECOWAS will be 50 years next year, 2025.
Well, Ruben, number one, I particularly welcome and commend General Gowon as one, if not the only surviving founding father of ECOWAS. I think he did the right thing to start with. You do not build a house and see people come back, come in years later to begin to destroy it, and you just sit down in your comfort zone and begin to watch this happen. On another program, actually, I think last week or 2 weeks ago, I actually did say that, look, former heads of state should be brought in to go and talk to these boys, to help ECOWAS out of this, quagmire. And I'm so glad that when General Gowon intervened, met with the Nigerian president, and then met with ECOWAS, I think it was the right step, and it contributed to some of the decisions that ECOWAS took. And I'm glad that the heads of state listened to the voice of wisdom, because it took the likes of General Gowon, Yadema, late General Yadema, and others to really bring ECOWAS together in the 70s. And it would be unfortunate if they are still alive and they sit down did nothing and just watch ECOWAS collapse. And I can also say to you that I'm privy of the fact that it was not only General Gowon that was concerned by what was going on in ECOWAS. There were people, family members of late presidents, who were instrumental to the formation of ECOWAS, who were worried and were sending messages all over the place that ECOWAS needed to be saved. And I'm sure the messages, particularly from some wise, got to ECOWAS leadership. And they all agreed that, okay, we've gone as far as we could, let's begin to find a way out. Look, this is diplomacy. Diplomacy is all about the act of compromise. They've gone somewhere, and I think everybody realizes that where they are now, they needed to draw back a little and review issues. And that's what ECOWAS have done. And I think what they've done is in the right direction. What is left now going forward is the management that they ensure they can actually reach out to these other states and see how, quote and unquote, the outstanding political issues can be resolved.
Well, finally on ECOWAS, before I move on quickly to Russia-Ukraine war, second anniversary, the war that has now entered its third year. Now, Nigeria's role in this ECOWAS sanctions saga. In August 2023, when Niger was suspended, Nigeria very quickly cut off electricity supply to Niger. I recall that in November 2023, a group of northern senators appealed to President Tinubu in his capacity as president and as chairman of the ECOWAS Authority of Heads of State and Government not to restore electricity supply. Now, the meeting had hardly ended yesterday when Nigeria said it was going to return electricity to Niger. What do you think? Looks like Nigeria seems to have turned out really badly. Foreign policy, failure in this regard, in terms of how we play the cards.
Well, mistakes were made. But the most important thing is that people do realize their mistakes and take the necessary steps to correct the mistakes. As I said at the beginning of this program, maybe remember that, look, the regime was just coming, the administration of President Bola Tinubu was just coming, and was in the process of settling down, where they were confronted with this, with these issues. So when you hear the American presidential candidate say that they are going to be president from day one, it is exactly what they mean that, look, you are not too sure what happens the very day you take up office. And consequently, you must be prepared to deal with all issues that come to your table. So we've had our own baptism of fire. We've gone through it now, and it's a learning process, But I think at the end of the day, there's some lessons to be learned. And I sincerely hope that future leaders in this country will also anticipate that, not only at the presidential level, but also at the state level, to say that, look, coming to office, you are not too sure what to expect and what would happen overnight. So you must be prepared to deal with any situation that comes, that is brought to your table. As it is, again, I go back to how we started. All is well that ends well. We are going to restore electricity back to Niger. And I sincerely hope that they will accept the overtures and allow flights, to cross Niger and reduce the long distance that some aircrafts are now taking to get into Nigeria. So all is well at the end of the day.
Okay, 2 years anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. What do you think? The sanctions seem not to have worked. Russia appears to be on the offensive. Ukraine is on the defensive. And yet the Western allies say, they will support Ukraine for as long as it takes. Can Ukraine win the war? Can Russia lose the war?
Well, look, when this war broke 2 years ago, it was almost like David and Goliath. But here, 2 years on, Ukraine has managed to at least survive, or the regime or the people, they've taken a lot. And yet they are still determined to fight on. They have made it clear they have no alternative but to defend their land. In spite of the challenges that they face today, I still believe that, look, this is very unfair. And you can look at what's going on in Ukraine today. The inability of the global community to really hold Putin and Russia accountable has also encouraged and empowered people like Netanyahu to do what they are doing in Gaza. So the international community must come together and in one voice begin to think seriously on how to resolve the issues in this war. But I am very, very confident that Ukraine will fight on. I'm not too sure if in 2 years Russia has not been able to win this war, that they are going to win the war in the next 6 months. I sincerely doubt it. I think this war has demystified the strength and the capacity of the Russian military. Now, that is different from its nuclear capabilities. No, I'm not talking about nuclear capabilities. But not to be able to win this war in the last 2 years. And if Putin wants to be honest and tell the truth, I'm not sure that he expected or anticipated a long war. I think it was like we are going to march into Kyiv and then take over the country and do whatever we want to, But here we are 2 years. It's been massive destruction. You just gave the number of the people who have died, civilians and the military. The question we should ask ourselves, not only about Ukraine and, and Gaza. Look, do we still have a sense of humanity? We are watching the people die for nothing. And the whole international community just say, I support this, the right of this to do this, and so on. And some other people are actually launching and killing people on a daily basis. I think something needs to be done, particularly to address the hypocrisy I see across board today in the global community.
Well, the hypocrisy of the global community. The defense secretary of Ukraine was just saying that, yes, the Western allies keep saying they will provide more aid and they will continue to support, but that this aid comes late. Is that not clear evidence that Ukraine is bound to lose? Even if only yesterday, UK, Canada, were pledging more support.
It's not a question of pledging more support. If they are, it's like what the West in particular, there are three ways I sometimes look at this. The West is pledging more support, but they are not giving Ukraine the type of military arsenal that Ukraine needs to be able to recover all its territory. Ukraine is not interested in defeating Russia. Ukraine has a very limited objective. Take back the areas that is being occupied by the Russian forces, period, and retain its country. So if you really want to help Ukraine, and I've been saying this since day one, give Ukraine the type of arms and ammunition, weapons that it needs to be able to successfully defend itself. And there's no other way. But if you do not do that, it is, at the end of the day, to the disadvantage of the West to have Ukraine fall into the Russian orbit.
Okay, well, finally, what we hear is that early voting is already underway in parts of Ukraine for the Russian presidential elections, and certainly it looks like Putin is likely to win that. Can anybody ever stop Putin?
He's the only candidate to start with. And it goes back to what I said before. When we all sit back and watch evil, you never know how far that evil can go. It is the hypocrisy, the lack of, and the inability of the international community to come together and speak with one voice. To stop the like of Putin, or to stop the massacre or genocide or whatever you call it going on in Gaza. That it's responsible for what Putin is doing today. For him, it might be like a victory, but what type of victory, that you have killed so many people just because of a historical belief that this is part of your land and you must take it back. It has nothing to do with expansion, because since this war started, NATO is far, far closer today to Russia than before the war, the war started. You set your mind to the Middle East. All the Arab countries are not in any mood to engage Israel, but they are looking for a way, very quiet way, because they want to continue their relationship with Israel. But the people of Gaza are suffering for what they are not really responsible for. Yes, Hamas, but everybody, 20-something thousand people that have died in this war, and the rest of the 10 or 20,000 people that have died in Ukraine. At the end of the day, let's just hope that they did not die for nothing. That Ukraine will be able to survive as a country, and it has a right to survive as a country.
Well,
that is what I think. We just hope that...
Yes, there have been suggestions that NATO should get involved in the war, should enter the war, given its capacity. Do you think that NATO will ever get involved and change the course of the war?
NATO will not get involved because of their hypocrisy. You know, just like the Arab states will not get militarily involved, again, because of their own, I won't say selfish interest, because of their own national interest. They are more concerned about their own survival than getting in a war that they think they will be the losers. So we must find a way out. And of course, you find other countries that are just keeping quiet and just saying, look, let it play itself out. For me, I just think that the international community must have the conscience to come together and address these issues collectively. We cannot watch 20,000 here and there, innocent people, women and children, die for something they cannot explain, something they are not responsible for, something they don't even know the history of where it comes from. You are just sitting down with your parents, you know, and then the whole building is ripped off. And that's the end of your life on earth. So look, sometimes I don't know how I look at it, but I watch television here now and then, and it's just so painful to see the massive destruction going on in these two areas, and the rest of us are just going on as if nothing is happening or minding our own business. Of course, we have our own challenges, our own desire for survival. But at the end of the day, I sincerely hope that the world will come together. NATO will not get into the fight, not even if a misguided missile lands in Poland or lands somewhere else. There will be an excuse because NATO itself is not prepared to go to war with Russia. The consequences will be too great. Again, just like today in the Middle East, the fear of expanding the theater of war is also very great. And that is because the powers do not want to get in, do not want the expansion. You can also see the same thing happening in Ukraine. NATO is not interested in fighting directly, but they will continue to want to help Ukraine to survive.
Yes, well, threat of escalation of a nuclear war. Some people say World War III. And you talked about challenges. Certainly, yes, these other countries have their own challenges. About 62 elections coming up. One or two already have taken place in the year 2024. So some of those countries also have to worry about elections in their countries. But we'll see how it goes. On that note, I would like to thank you very much, Ambassador Joe Keshi, for joining us on This Day Live, the Sunday Talk Show.